outside the box reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Predator Kenner Tribute Blade Fighter vehicle. And yet again, we have something that is incredibly hard to fit on my backdrop here, so you're going to see a little bit of the walls on either side and maybe even a little more depending on how I have to maneuver this thing. But this was a piece that I never really thought I was going to pick up. Listen to my reviews, you can kind of see why I'm not completely enamored with the Kenner Predator line, but I enjoyed the new ones enough that I figured, you know what, I'm close enough to being a completionist on this line, might as well dive all the way in and get this vehicle. And I'll say up front, I'm actually not disappointed in this thing. It is, for one thing, absolutely huge. A gigantic vehicle for your Predator figure. And it sports some very impressive sculpting and paint. So let's try to take a look at this thing. And we're going to start at the back corner of the Blade Fighter, the little wing sticking out to the side. And I absolutely love the painted detail on this. It has a very nice coppery tone to it with actually some separate little different shades of that copper color, but the sculpt is beautifully done. A ton of little scratches and nicks in here, just looking like it's been through war. Nice little vent here in the front, and then some really cool kind of embossed little detailing here. This actually was a sticker on the original Kenner toy and has now been made into a sculpted bit of detailing here. On the underside of either wing, we have these clamps that hold onto a gun. We'll get into that gun a little more in a minute. The other wing, very similarly sculpted. A lot of great detail, its own separate gun underneath. The very bottom side kind of has this nice looking skid plate here, which is very Predator style looking, and also very worn looking, which I really like. Then up here, we have a hole, which is actually used for mounting this piece on your wall. It actually comes with a foam adhesive piece that can go over this to protect your paint, and you just stick a thumbtack or a nail in the wall. A thumbtack might not hold something as heavy as this, even though it's not very heavy, but we'll just hang it up and it will look like it's flying straight up the wall. But even the other side has some detail, some vents around here, and some very nice paint apps. On the back of the chair here, more detail sculpted in with a red stripe down the middle, another vent, and then kind of this weird tail-looking piece coming off the back. The cockpit itself is a nice gray. There's a chair kind of design to it, even though the Predator doesn't really sit in it like a chair. That's another nod to the classic Kenner design, where the Predator sat back in his seat as opposed to here where he sits a little more forward. We have his arm controls, which are actually articulated. They will hinge up and down and move in and out a little bit, which is very important when you're trying to pose your character on there. We also have a screen up here in the front that the Predator can look at. Has different little targeting looking pieces on it. Very nicely applied. You don't have to apply that sticker yourself, which is something I was afraid you would have to do. On the top here, you do have a canopy that hinges down. Some really cool blue dry brushing on the edges, kind of giving it this worn out look like it was a metallic blue metal underneath. Painted black, and you can see the bits where it's worn away. And this red here is reminiscent of a Predator's visor, and some kind of sharp little pieces up here. Front section kind of reminds me of an eagle. We've got these little black orbs here, which I almost imagine would be like a camera system or something. But that paint job continues on. Everything on this is very worn looking, very battle damaged looking, which is super cool in my opinion. Up here on either side, we have some ball joint posable little laser guns. You can aim however you want. Got the intake up here. See more of that blue dry brushing going on. A really nice looking vent in the front. Just overall some very nice detail. And then the front, that's not the front here. We do have some more kind of intake areas. A little vent down here as well. And here, looking at it separate, is the blade piece of the Blade Fighter. It's a nice black plastic with some silver highlights to it, ending in a piece of red. This is about where it will stop and connect into your vehicle itself, so you're not going to see too much of this little stick coming off the back here, but this red piece goes into the rest of the sculpt. And this will open up, and it has a nice kind of ratchet system where both arms will move together, and you could use that to clamp onto your xenomorphs and take them for a ride, even though I refuse to do such a thing. And as I said, that blade piece will insert right here into the front. It snaps with a very secure snap right into the front of the vehicle. Now, in pure Kenner fashion, this vehicle does feature two firing mechanisms. First off, we have this cannon up here at the top, which fires this gold missile here, and then the blades themselves will fire off the front. So, since I do not have enough room, I will just kind of shoot over top of the camera so you get an idea. That wasn't smart. And those guns from the underside of the ship are removable, and you could have your Predator hold them. This one has kind of a very almost rocky look to it. It's very a blocky weapon. Pretty cool looking though, a nice shape to it, very alien looking. Both these guns are a little large, so it's not really very easy for your Predator to hold them, but they do fit in his hands. And we have this one here, which has a pretty cool look to it as well. It actually kind of reminds me of the gun from Avengers that Coulson uses in a weird way. Now, the only problem with this one is there is a gap up here at the top, and my dumbass thought it was a take-apart weapon, that it'd be like two separate weapons. So now I just gotta glue mine back together because it doesn't want to stay. But just don't pull it apart and you'll be just fine. And that ridiculously large spear gun can also be wielded by your Predator. But quite honestly, if you have him running around with this, people are gonna think he's compensating for something. Speaking of your Predator figure, this vehicle wouldn't be very good if he couldn't actually ride on it. So to attach your Predator, you take the individual control arm, and the easiest thing honestly is to pop your Predator's hand off. And you can see there are 4 kind of holes here in the front with the thumb hole there. So you just have to get his hand to grip the control. This process is quite honestly easier said than done, but once you get it on there, it has a pretty tight grip on the control because his fingers are stuck into it. Next, you kind of position your Predator not really sitting on the blade fighter, but more leaning towards the back. And then we have these clips here that will actually clamp his ankles in. And that makes sure he is nice and secure on the vehicle. Then it's simply a matter of popping his wrists back onto his hands and doing what little you can to adjust his body. I find that you're really going to end up with his biomask or his head basically touching the bottom of the control console. And then once you go to close the cockpit, you're going to realize it doesn't close all the way anymore. I've played with this quite a bit. I cannot find any way to get it to close completely with the Predator in there. So I'm just going to have to adopt the idea that it's not actually a cockpit, it's a blast shield, and it's just supposed to come down and protect his head. So that is the Blade Fighter vehicle. And overall, I think it's going to get a very weak recommend. It's definitely cool. I love the paint apps on it. But unlike what NECA's been able to do with some of these Kenner tribute figures, it feels a lot more like a toy than most things NECA gives us. The fact that it has big oversized guns for your Predator figure and a launching missile that's also oversized and a big capture claw that shoots out the front, in a way it just kind of seems hokey. And I understand that it's a tribute to a child's toy that had these gimmicks, but to me they're just pieces that I'm never going to use. And while we're on the subject, what was NECA really thinking? Giving us a capture claw on the front to grab alien figures. And yeah, those just happen to be some of the most fragile NECA figures there are, so have fun shooting those across the room. But it looks really cool, and I'm excited to pin this up on my wall and have it as a display piece. And if you're a completionist, well, you'll probably get suckered into it just like I did. So this officially wraps up this installment of Predator Week. But I've got plenty of otherworldly reviews lined up. We'll go to deep space in the future, and maybe, well, a character that's not really from outer space in the incarnation we're going to be looking at, but historically was. So in the meantime, make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also follow me on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this is another Outside the Box Reviews. Predator Week is over.